There's a crucial molecule in your body that helps control everything: your circulation, your energy, your stamina, your heart, even your sharpness of mind. It's called nitric oxide. But after age 40, your body makes less and less of it. Less blood flow, less stamina, less of you. But now there's N101, the nitric oxide lozenge developed by Dr. Nathan Bryan, the world's leading nitric oxide researcher backed by Nobel Prize-winning science. N101 is designed to naturally restore your body's nitric oxide levels. Just do what I do and let one dissolve in your mouth twice a day. I especially make sure to take it before workouts. N101 goes to work in minutes, releasing nitric oxide directly into your bloodstream, supporting healthy circulation, boosting oxygen delivery to your muscles and brain, helping you feel the way you're supposed to feel. More energy, better blood flow, sharper focus. Day after day. N101, it's the science of you working better. Visit HoffmanNO.com. That's HoffmanNO.com and use coupon code Hoffman10 for 10% off N101. Welcome back to today's Intelligent Medicine Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Ronald Hoffman. We're talking about how energy is everything when it comes to human health, vitality, but also when it comes to the many challenging medical conditions and degenerative conditions, age-related conditions that we encounter. Our guest is Corey Schuler. He's written a brilliant article which introduces the concept of the energy allocation system. It has to do with our energy budget. It is fundamental when it comes to everything that we do, our thinking, our physical performance, but also our immune system activity. So what I want to do for our listeners is boil it down to some kind of tangible examples of how this concept comes into play when dealing with patients that you see in clinical practice. So can you give us some clinical anecdotes?
Sure. Yeah, I was working with a woman in her 40s who really suspected she was in the middle of perimenopause. And so she had some of the cardinal symptoms of perimenopause, which a lot of listeners may appreciate. But she was sleeping really hot at night. So it was like, oh, is that like a night sweat, like the hot flashes, those vasomotor symptoms? She weighed within like the normal range. I know that we were sort of doing away with BMI, but her BMI was normal, but she had noticed that she had gained weight over the past couple of years. She was taking she had been on oral contraceptives for many, many years. And so she's like, well, I probably need to move off those and maybe do the hormone replacement therapy. And that was where the conversation really started. But then she started telling me about like, well, I've been a busy bee my whole life. I've been very active. I've been always doing things. Just don't really have that motivation front anymore. So maybe I'm just getting older. And I was like, well, you're only in your 40s, so let's not call it that.
From where I'm standing, that looks pretty vibrant and young.
Yeah, no, and she looked vibrant and young. So it was like, no, I don't think you're just getting older. And so we ran a battery of tests, as you do, and we looked at different thyroid markers. We looked at a variety of the sex hormone markers, and on her own accord, she actually implemented a continuous glucose monitor herself. And so we got all these
just parameters. For our listeners, that's one of those things you stick on your arm, and it gives you continual readout, and you can read it on your smartphone or on a the device also has like an app, where you can. From moment to moment, you can see what your meals are doing, what your exercise is doing, what your sleep is doing to your blood sugar.
And she actually got it because she was wondering if there were certain foods that she was either like had food sensitivities to or had a big glycemic or blood sugar spike with. And so she was thinking about it from a different reason. Again, it was sort of that, that weight body composition idea that she's like, oh, well, maybe I'm just into something that I shouldn't be into. So, what we found is that really everything looked pretty darn normal. Like our vitamin D was a little bit low, but that's pretty common here in the upper Midwest. And triglycerides are a little bit high, and didn't see really anything until I took a really careful look at the continuous glucose monitor. and we did see some variability to that. What we saw though was after meal spikes lasted a very long time. We should have, if you're having carbohydrates in your meals, we should have some elevation in blood sugar. That just makes sense. But it should come down. And hers was not coming down. So I kind of suspected maybe is this like insulin resistance, but her fasting insulin was normal. Her hemoglobin A1C was actually stellar good. So I didn't write it off, but I was like, I don't think it's a blood sugar pathology. It's not type 2 diabetes in this normal weight woman. So I had to just think a little bit differently. What we decided, or kind of the theory that we were working with her, is that her body was spending time trying to make hormones that she was actually already replacing. So the oral contraceptives seemed to be the problem. She was not planning to have more children or anything
Hmm.
else like that, but she had been started on oral contraceptives many, many years ago for acne and heavy periods and just never really got off them. So she was
And
exposed a
incidentally,
lot.
I will tell you that, as a physician, that sometimes doctors say, well, you're not ready for, hormone patches or progesterone, but you could just, during menopause, it's good. I just take this birth control pill because it'll help to regulate your, heavy periods and it'll, prevent you from getting, severe PMS. So they just use that. And it's not bioidentical. It's like synthetic hormones and it's got unpredictable effects on the body.
Yeah, I'm not all against it. It was just in this case, it was just kind of not the right fit
Hmm.
anymore for her. And so we were able to, cease those and give her body a little bit of time. While we did that, though, there's some attractiveness to provide some support, some help, some, get that energy up as soon as we can. And so I could have, if I wanted to, given her a little bit of T3 thyroid hormone. That was an opportunity where it was like, suboptimal. I could probably do that. But I worried that I would end up doing the same thing to her thyroid that we were experiencing with the ovarian function and those gonadal products.
Because by giving
So
the outside stuff, you suppress its own function.
correct. Right. So I focused really inherently on the ability to produce those hormones to make sure that those substrates and cofactors were all there and in sufficient levels. And then we also took a bead on, hey, it looks like there is sort of a stress response that is going on. I want to make a really strong point on this. In the literature, there's this a scale. It's called the perceived stress scale. And when that is low, it doesn't necessarily mean that the body or the person is responding well to stress. And it doesn't mean they're responding poorly to it either. It means virtually nothing. So if
It's
you ask
subjective.
a
It's
patient,
subjective, right? Yeah,
completely.
yeah.
If you ask a patient, hey, how are you feeling? Are you feeling stressed? And they say no, okay, that doesn't tell you anything. If they say yes, we almost always see a positive, like dysregulated cortisol pattern or something a part of that. So we look for the yes,
Hmm.
but there's those false negatives when they say no. Because she said no, we had to dive a little bit deeper into what her stress response biochemistry was. And that's where we identified that, okay, we're going to really need to help. We had to boost up morning cortisol for her. We needed to bring down evening cortisol. She had some goofiness going on in the middle of the day about where her cortisol was at. And so proper timing and use of nutrients was actually really helpful. And it didn't take all that long. I think
And could you
10,
explain the
12 weeks.
relationship between cortisol and blood sugar? Because that I think is, a lot of people, they feel nervous, they feel hyper, they have symptoms of hypoglycemia, and it's not just diet related. It has something to do with how the adrenals handle the food, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. And there's this old, well, I say old test, but it is. There's something called the Coca pulse test. And if you eat
Hmm.
a food that you don't respond well to, you can actually palpate how that your heart rate has gone up. Like
Hmm.
there is a stress reaction
Yeah,
going on
I
there.
remember that.
And so some people, when you get stressed, and this is like almost evolutionary, right? If you need to run away from a bear in the woods, you need elevated blood glucose to be able to activate or feed the skeletal muscle so that you can run away and climb a tree or do whatever you need to do. I don't know how to get away from bears, but that stress causes blood sugar to go up. And to the other degree, right, as that happens, there is the normal response where insulin has to kick in because we don't want to be in a hyperglycemic state for long term. And so that can actually drive it too low depending on the body's responsiveness to it. And so this low energy status can be low blood sugar. It can be low cortisol production or insufficient cortisol production. And it's a little bit of a chicken and egg. Usually can tease it out and figure out which one's which, but both can affect both.
So if the energy currency of the body is related to mitochondrial function, you can sort of tweak the hormones. You can give some thyroid, you can give some hormone replacement therapy, and men you can give some testosterone. You can also support thyroid function. How do you get to fundamentally reviving mitochondrial function so that it nourishes all the body's systems? Because, in your energy allocation system theory suggests that that's really the body's currency.
Correct. Yeah, resuscitation of mitochondria can be very difficult, right? We know this from the ends of the clinical spectrum, right? The inborn errors of metabolism, not being able to convert from one chemical to another in the body. But there's acquired mitochondriopathies, and sometimes this can be caused from high exposure of antibiotics or other, pollutants. Pesticides have been implicated in this very thing. And so number one is to remove the obstacle, right? I always talk about removing constraints, removing obstacles. If you're continuously exposed to it, you can't resuscitate that which is continuously being exposed. It's like trying to stop swelling after you get stung by a bee. Nope, the bee has to stop stinging you.
Right.
Bee is a bad example because I think they only sting once, but a hornet, let's call it a hornet.
Okay.
So the sequelae to all of that is that the body needs the mitochondria specifically. One of the best fuel sources of this is actually triglycerides. It's a cheap, easy, mobile form of fat. And so I look for triglycerides, and my cardiologist friends roll their eyes at me and they're like, well, if triglycerides are high, cardiovascular risk. And I say, yeah. And if they're low, that's a significant problem. If I don't have that cheap form of triglycerides floating around that I can push into the mitochondria, that's a significant issue.
That's an insight, because I do see that sometimes, like, we worry about high triglycerides, they're a problem. Yeah. But I do see in some patients where it's really severe, debilitating conditions like multiple sclerosis and things like that, that sometimes very chronic fatigue syndrome, very low triglycerides, which is kind of an energy store.
Yeah, and the pattern is the low triglycerides and also elevated HDL, which again makes the cardiologist super happy.
Yeah,
is a bit of a marker, at least points me in the direction towards where you were talking about, is these autoimmune diseases. And of course, the most common cause of thyroid disease is Hashimoto's thyroiditis, autoimmune degradation of thyroid production or thyroid gland itself. And that's where I find that if triglycerides are sufficient, though, and they're still not maybe getting where they need, because we're talking about this mitochondrial resuscitation idea, is that even if they're borderline high, are they getting into the cell, right? Because you can park next to the gas tank, but if the gas doesn't get into the car, well, it's not going anywhere. If it's a combustible engine, of course.
So I'm thinking maybe like carnitine. Carnitine is something that could be helpful for that.
Carnitine.
Yeah.
Carnitine is, it had its day. This is probably in the 90s, which I guess I'm dating myself as well. But we thought that might be one of the ways to get to lipolysis, to weight loss, is to use carnitine. It's not great for total body weight loss and fat loss the way we think about, but it does do a great job of getting those triglycerides into the mitochondria where it can make some use out of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that might be a mitochondrial support method. And then, of course, does diet have something to do with that? Because, on a diet that's bereft of fat, like a very sallow vegan comes in and says they're devitalized, could it be that they lack dietary fats and perhaps protein, other nutrients?
Yeah, I see it quite commonly. Somebody who's on a very low fat diet, and sometimes it's medically necessary, and I get that. But oftentimes, if it's long term, especially, let's go short term. People who just got their gallbladder removed and they're on a low fat diet, they probably have plenty of fat stores that their body can liberate and use, and they never experience this. But if you're on the slender side of things, you don't have a lot of subcutaneous fat, and then you pair that with a low fat diet, not having sufficient fat intake, we absolutely can see energy status be impaired. And so one of the things we do is we can actually evaluate that. We can look at what your essential fatty acid profile looks like. It's sort of a complicated report, but it's easy enough to treat and fix. But most of the time, just a wide variety of different fats can be really helpful. Frankly, having some saturated fats and monounsaturated fats and polyunsaturated fats, they all serve their purposes. And so devoiding any of those pieces can be problematic. Then this is where, again, I feel like I'm making a lot of enemies with cardiology, but like I think we might be a lot of saturated fat deficiencies in certain diet patterns. Now, of course, there's a lot of positive press about saturated fat. I don't think it's all good either, but a little bit of saturated fat really improves the membrane stability of cells, and of course, the mitochondria themselves have its own membranes, and so membrane stability is really important to be able to recognize the signals like T3 that we talked about.
I guess one of our sponsors, NT Factor, is a phospholipid replacement product, which is designed to improve the integrity of cell membranes. Also, there's a lot of talk about urolithin A. Are you on the urolithin A train?
Almost.
Okay.
The evidence is emerging well enough, and the basic sciences are getting really clear about it. When I mean basic sciences, right? Like cell studies and animal studies and these sorts of things is very promising. But whenever I see the promising, I'm always a little bit nervous to a degree, right? Not willing to completely jump on that because we saw the very same thing with resveratrol. And resveratrol is fine. It has its benefits. It has its uses, but we didn't validate that it was useful in the human in real world situations to the same degree. So that's where I'm like,
and $77 million later, after GlaxoSmithKline bought that concept, it turned out not to be patentable, so they kind of backed off of it.
I mean, I would back off too if that was my situation.
Right.
Yeah. So, but urolithin A, I actually think this is one of those perfect candidates for mitohormesis. That's I think what it's doing if I read the literature correctly, and so it's giving that proper dose. So then you got to figure out sometimes there's going to be dose dependence because we are all built a little bit differently, and there probably isn't going to be a perfect dose.
I guess there are other less esoteric supplements that have an impact on mitochondrial function that might figure into this. So I'm thinking magnesium, certain B vitamins.
Yeah. Yep. And there, some of them are indirect. You can support I'm actually working on a paper right now about the micronutrient determinants of mitohormesis.
Oh,
so
cool.
Funny you mentioned that. Things like so the methylfolate and B12 in the methylation cycle, and trimethylglycine, which is probably one of my favorites, which actually does have, again, some emerging evidence on both energy status as well as fat loss. And so trimethylglycine I really like in that methylation cycle. Niacin is in riboflavin, other B vitamins, basic stuff, but important to have at the right dose at the right time. Magnesium, very clear. Like this is going to help with that redox balance, the oxidative stress load. Funny enough, that mitochondria makes a ton of oxidative stress, lots of free radicals, right? It's an engine and lots of exhaust. And so we think that that's not necessarily a good thing. Well, it actually drives a lot of proper function. And if we quench that and we kind of over antioxidant ourselves in certain ways, that can actually be problematic as well. Now, N-acetylcysteine, glutathione can help dampen some of that, but it's not always required at the higher doses.
Okay, folks, at this point, let's pause and allow one of our sponsors to share an important message with you. So here goes. Listen up.
Has your digestive health been striking out due to poor food choices, medications, stress, and other lifestyle issues? This season, hit a home run for your digestive health with Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics. Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics is a live probiotic encapsulated in small, easy-to-swallow capsules that delivers Dr. Ohhira's signature blend of pre, pro, and postbiotics. Dr. Ohhira's award-winning formula contains a prebiotic blend of fruits and vegetables, which are naturally fermented with 13 strains of live probiotic bacteria for a minimum of 3 years. The result? Dr. Ohhira's game-changing postbiotic metabolites, which are key to supporting long-term digestive, immune, and cognitive function. Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics, an all-star formulation and the best probiotic on the market today for overall digestive health and wellness. Dr. Ohhira's Probiotics, available at Sprouts, Natural Grocers, and other natural health retailers nationwide.
Thanks for listening, and thanks for supporting our sponsors. They are what make intelligent medicine a continuing free resource to you. And now back to our guest, Dr. Corey Schuler. So more fundamentally, on a lifestyle level, when you counsel, you see a lot of patients who are suffering from burnout, like this example that you gave, or, maybe the harried businessman who doesn't relax the vitality, tries to play golf or, paddleball or whatever they're trying to do. And they just don't have enough zing. What could they be doing on the lifestyle basis?
Yeah, it's actually it's the question in my mind that needs to be answered, because we don't totally know, right? There's too many variables but I will say this, from my read of the literature and just having done this for now 20 years, I find that higher vigor activity and shorter bursts of it tend to be, and then followed by a significant enough of a rest. And I had to kind of learn this the hard way. A lot of people, when I say that, they're like, oh, like high intensity interval training. Yeah,
right.
Yeah, that's an okay example.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. But a better example is actually strength training. So if you take a 24-year-old fit individual in their weight training and they follow the textbook, okay, I'm going to do a set, and then I'm going to wait a minute or maybe 90 seconds if I'm feeling a little bit tired, and then I'm going to hit it again. But in our 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond, that rest period may require 3 to 5 minutes, especially if you're doing squats and deadlifts at maximal effort.
Today was my leg day, so I can empathize. Yeah. So
yes.
So okay. So they require a little longer interval. So that actually doesn't vitiate the effectiveness of the exercise. That you maybe your heart rate goes up well into the high range, and then you recover, and then you resume and rinse and repeat. So many cycles.
Yeah. In the gym, that's how I talk to people, right? That's like, I want you to actually take your pulse rate, get it back down to whatever it was before your lift. It should be close to that, maybe 10% higher, but it doesn't have to. I don't want you to get back to that set until your heart rate has gone down. Now, that's the zoom in version, right? But you think about your week, or you think about your month, or you think about the season of life. You mentioned the business person, right? We used to have seasons in all of our specialties and professions, right? I think tax season for the accountants. Well, seasons have sort of gone away. And now it's just busy all the time, and there is no recovery. We wait and wait and wait for that, 10-day or 2-week vacation or something. But the pacing of that is not necessarily appropriate for how bodies are built. We're expected to rest and not just sleep. There is an expectation of rest, and it probably ends up being about weekly that you need to take a little bit more rest than you would expect.
So people, it could go either way. It could be a sedentary lifestyle, very deleterious, but then some people I think are compulsive exercisers, and maybe they're pushing themselves in the red zone, and that can damage the mitochondria. One of the sickest, most exhausted people I ever encountered, and I really was dismayed I couldn't help him, was an ultramarathoner who was a vegan ultramarathoner. Actually, he was world famous for almost establishing the ultramarathon as a competitive event. And in his 50s, he started to develop progressively worse fatigue, and nobody could properly diagnose it. It wasn't, ALS. It wasn't any neuromuscular disorder that they could figure out. But I'm pretty sure that the guy kind of burnt through his mitochondrial reserve.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a whole body of literature, excuse me, on that exact idea, on the dose responsiveness to maladaptation, where the mitochondria stop producing at the rate that they normally would if they've experienced a dose of any one thing. That dose could be exercise, it could be, I don't know, whatever, water. The mitochondria shifts its
Sleep
behavior.
deprivation, emotional stress, you name
Yep.
it, dietary restriction.
Correct. It shuts down cofactors. And just again, like the switches, it just shuts those down like one at a time, like the breaker in your basement to keep your lights on.
Well, and that's actually one of the corollaries to the energy allocation system theory that you have, is that when people get tired and they have bad thyroid function, adrenal function, and or their hormones plummet, their sex hormones plummet, it's actually the body's adaptation. The body's kind of triaging these things. It's like, the lifeboat that's overfilled, like, who's going to go over the side to enable the rest of the passengers to survive.
Yeah. And I think maybe that was one of the biggest learnings that the co-authors and I had after we kind of put together and synthesized a lot of the literature, is that it's easy to think of this as like a hierarchy. It's like, oh, it's the stress response, and then it's thyroid, and then it's, gonad. And so what that leads us to believe then is just fix the HPA axis, that integrated stress response system, and then everything else falls into place. But that's actually not quite the case. We kind of need to, I don't want to say fix everything all at once, but there has to be a path forward to address all of the pieces, because otherwise the system that is maybe at deficit can't ever catch up. And so we find that there's, at least within the theory, rationale to maybe either see more than one doctor at once if you're working with specialists, or working with somebody that can actually see it from this other lens and saying, all right, yep, you have a thyroid problem. You actually have Hashimoto's thyroiditis. We're going to treat that because we should treat that. But what other systems are related to this? And it's probably the stress and gonad axis that are relevant to that conversation.
And there's kind of a electronic analogy to this, is that sometimes inexplicably, my computer goes into what's called low power mode.
Yep.
Low power mode because maybe the battery's weak, or maybe I've just got too many programs running. And it used to happen more. I think they've created more redundancy at computer systems, but I would look that dread signal of low power mode because we're running too many systems at once, and it just had to conserve energy.
To make that more palatable for people, we actually use that in the paper, and we refer to it as phenotypes, right? The physiologic expressions of what's going on in the body. And these phenotypes are like the mobilization driven phenotype. That person, sometimes it's referred to as like wired but tired. Like there's definitely an energy imbalance somewhere, but they're driving through it. There's the conservation dominant, which is actually what we see when we talk about when people say they have low energy or chronic fatigue or etc., like we've been chatting about. Conservation dominant phenotype is the one that's probably most common amongst the hypothyroid crowd, and the one that probably needs the most attention, because like a lot of us, we don't necessarily know what to do with that. There's a lot of variables, and they have to all be looked at as close to inspection as possible, I would say.
So it sounds like you're dealing with these issues, dealing with deficits in the energy allocation system. It requires an all of the above approach. It's a medicinal, endocrine support program, but also a lifestyle program, a supplementary program, a dietary program, an exercise program that's appropriate to the person's stage. You can't just put people into HIIT, high intensity interval training, when they're in a state of chronic fatigue. So that's I think what's interesting about it. It's a theory, but it's a theory that I think that really has a lot of practical implications for how we can treat people who are stuck.
Yeah, and the hallmarks and the hope is that it gives clinicians and scientists a language, right? We talk a lot about pacing and sequencing. Okay, those words mean something in our real lives, so they can mean something in our clinical lives. We talk about the constraints, like are there constraints that are within the system that can be removed, or are there constraints that can't be removed? And let's identify those constraints. But constraints, pacing, sequencing, and that it drills right into clinical practice as far as like protocol building. Sometimes we put too much into driving output rather than building up the system and resilience. And so I'll do a little bit of a tease because there's a sequelae term that's evolving called mitohormetic readiness. And if you have proper mitohormetic readiness, then you can execute on any mitohormetic features that could be relevant. So that's the coming soon.
Well, I try to apply a lot of hormesis to my mitochondria on a dose appropriate basis, which involves the exercise, which involves the hot cold challenges, and also dietary manipulation, and intellectual stimulation with conversations like I'm having with you. So just the right dose of intellectual stimulation. My smoke's not coming out of my ears yet, so I'm experiencing mitochondrial hormesis at this point. So good stuff. Where can people find out more about your work? And you have a practice, and I don't know even where you're located.
Yeah, I practice as a nurse practitioner at Synergy Family Physicians in White Bear Lake, Minnesota, right by St. Paul.
That's right.
And so that is, you can probably hear it in my voice sometimes.
Little Midwestern
my Minnesota
tang,
come out.
Right? Yeah.
And then I'm publishing as often as I can. So Web of Science is a great place for that, or search me on PubMed, a good place for that. I've written a few articles on things like on andropause. I've written on circadian rhythm, and now energy allocation system and clinical bioenergetics. And then allergyresearchgroup.com is probably the best place to find where our kind of where the rubber meets the road and where all my ideas are expressed into real life products that people can use.
Yeah, it really, I have to commend you because it's a great company and, very innovative products. I go way back when to the origins of that company with Steve Levine, who was really a pioneer in this field, one of the legacy companies in the field of functional and integrative medicine. So kudos to you for, having the ability to fill those very, very big shoes. It's quite an accomplishment for your career. So good stuff. Thanks very much for joining us. And, I'll see you soon because we're going to be in a meeting of the board of directors of the BCNS. So we're on the same board. So it's nice. And it's nice to having this conversation with you and keeping up with your work. Thanks, Dr. Corey Schuler, for joining us. And just for the spelling of your name, it's Schuler. So that's the way you can look it up. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Dr. Ronald Hoffman, and this is the Intelligent Medicine Podcast. I want to thank you for listening to the Intelligent Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast app, and get new episodes automatically downloaded every weekday. And please give us a rating and review. It truly helps new people discover intelligent medicine. The Intelligent Medicine Podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice, and no doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content of this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they may have, and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Finally, please visit drhoffman.com and discover everything Intelligent Medicine has to offer, including frequently updated, unbiased health news and fully vetted product and supplement recommendations. You're listening to Intelligent Medicine, a resource to help you take control of your health. We offer a balanced, objective analysis of all your health, wellness, and aging options, both conventional and alternative. Now you can take your engagement to the next level by joining Fullscript. Fullscript is my online dispensing platform that only offers curated, professional-grade supplement brands that I know and trust. Never counterfeit or expired, always stored and shipped correctly. Just go to drhoffmanstore.com for more information and to start your free Fullscript account. Buying through Fullscript offers fast, free shipping, optional refill reminders, a mobile-friendly site. It's safe, secure, and HIPAA compliant and offers world-class support. Just go to drhoffmanstore.com. You'll get access to the supplements and features you need to help you achieve your wellness goals, including my custom targeted protocols that combine the products I recommend to address specific needs, heart health, immune support, and much more. It's all at drhoffmanstore.com. drhoffmanstore.com.